So, somebody asked me where we do our living temple ordinances. They didn't actually say living, but I think there's a misunderstanding about temple ordinances. So, you can do your temple ordinances if they're living ordinances in groves or on the top of mountains or temple endowment homes, houses, dedicated spaces. You need the temple itself for doing dead work, work for the dead. We don't do work for the dead, we do work for the living. So we've done different things in different places in the wilderness. We've had apartments that we've had temple ordinances done that were completely vacant except for the temple furniture that we have in there. And the second part of the question was, are you a card-carrying member of the LDS Church? The answer to that is no, I am not anymore. I was baptized in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints a few months before my 10th birthday in 1987. Like I've said before, I became pretty anti-Mormon because of experiences that I had in the church with members, and like for instance, well, I don't really want to get into the whys because it doesn't matter anymore. But I did become a Baptist. I got saved November 25th, 1994, and I considered myself a Baptist and a very, staunch anti-Mormon until 96 when I met the missionaries. But I was still a member of the church during that time. I was under 18, so where my records were, they wouldn't let me. The bishop, who I went to see, Bishop Brown, in Clearfield, Utah, in 1994, 5, and whatever. Anyway, he wouldn't let me get my my name removed from the church. So anyway, in 96, that's when I had my conversion experience where I had tried to commit suicide. A friend who was supposed to be at work, I was staying at his house because I was homeless. He was supposed to be at work. He came home. First of all, he hid his gun because I was going to use his 357 that was in his closet. Anyway, but he came home to get his lunch that he had forgotten. And we lived by the Layton Hills Mall, and he worked on Hill Air Force Base. Anyway, he found me, called the ambulance. I was taken to the hospital. They saved my life. I don't remember hardly any of that. Anyway, when I got out of the hospital, I wrote God a letter, and I told him, if you'll heal me, speaking about my drug and alcohol addictions, and I think it was a mental thing too, because like the reason why I was using drugs and alcohol is because I was so suicidally depressed, which is why I tried to commit suicide. Anyway, I told him if he would heal me and show me the truth, I'd serve him for the rest of my life. And it was a couple of days later when I met the missionaries that came to my friend's apartment. And I was nice to them, but I told them I was going to see Romeo and Juliet, which is at the movie theater at that time. And anyway, they just kept coming back. So after a couple weeks, I think it was like 3 weeks, I finally let them in. And when they told me about Joseph Smith and seeing God and all of that, first discussion basically, uh, I just felt peace, which I hadn't felt in a long time. And they told me that I could have my, God would answer my questions too. Anyway, so after they left, I knelt down um, up against this futon mattress that was in my friend's apartment, and I was the only one there. And when I asked God if Joseph Smith was a true prophet, the Holy Spirit it just fell on me like fire, like hot oil flowing through my whole body, and I could, in my ears, hear a multitude of angels praising God. So couldn't deny that. Also, I was completely 100% healed of all my drug addictions in that very minute. So I was in the LDS Church as a faithful, active member from 1996 until 2013, when I was excommunicated for apostasy. I just married my wife July of 2012, and we got married so quickly. Within a month or two of knowing each other, I was like 2 months. And then within meeting each other, we were married 2 weeks later, like when we met face to face. Anyway, her mom was a meddler. Anyway, I believe it was her mom. She never confessed to this, but anyway, she went to the stake president in Birmingham, Vermont. I think it's Burlington or Birmingham, or I think it's Burlington. Anyway, that was the stake we were in. We lived in upstate New Hampshire, right on the border of Vermont, pretty close to Canada. Anyway, so the stake president asked me a bunch of questions point blank, and I answered him point blank. Yes, I have seen Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ face to face. Yes, I have embraced them in the flesh, in the light of the noonday sun. I told him some other things. He asked me about the Adam God doctrine. I said, yes, I do believe that. Yes, I do believe in polygamy. But I'm not going to live it, until God, I will never live polygamy until God specifically commands me personally with his own mouth to live it. And it has to be that my wife and I receive that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I didn't talk about that stuff with him. Anyway, but he said, do you sustain Thomas S. Monson as being a prophet, seer, and revelator? And I said, no, I sustain him as being the president of the church. I do not have any evidence to test whether he is a prophet, seer, or revelator. This made him really mad. He was already mad because I'd said that I'd seen God the Father and Jesus Christ. He called me a bold-faced liar. Only the president of the church can see Jesus Christ, and or the Father. Oh man. Anyway, so that was in December of 2012. They set my excommunication for, I think it was January 13th of 2013. I could be wrong about that. It was in January, though. I was an over-the-road truck driver at the time, and I usually come home on the weekends, but something had happened where we weren't going to be able to get home, and I drove a team truck. So, like, we'd leave, on Sunday night, Monday morning, and we could drive anywhere in the country and be back the next week. Like, I'd go out to California, come back, and have the weekend off, kind of thing. So anyway, something had happened. I don't know what it was, but we were not able to get home, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get home a couple of days before the trial. And I called him, and he said it didn't matter if I was going to be there or not, that I would be excommunicated before the trial. So I told him I really wanted to be there, but I couldn't make it back to New Hampshire or to Vermont. So I worked in Hartford, Connecticut. Well, I might have been working in Brockton, Massachusetts at the time, but either way, Brockton, Massachusetts or Hartford, Connecticut, my wife would have had to come pick me up. She's pregnant. Drive me to Vermont and then home. Anyway, it was still going to be difficult, but I did want to be there, but he wouldn't change the date. So I was excommunicated without trial, which according to the church law is actually against the rules that God has set forth. But they don't care about the rules anymore. So anyway, I did tell the stake president, look, like, I was married to President Hinckley's niece, and I dated President Monson's niece. I knew President Hinckley, and I knew Thomas Monson, and I knew L. Tom Perry, and I knew a bunch of them because we used to go to church at the Joseph Smith Memorial Building where the chapel is, where the prophet goes to church. Anyway, but so I wrote a letter about my 95 experience in 2004 at God's he asked me to do that, to write President Hinckley that letter. And I described in detail the room that I was taken into, which is not on any, there's no documentation of this room. The only people that go in that room is the prophet. And it's like, there's a Holy of Holies, people know about that one. That's like for the Savior. But the one in the middle tower on the east side, under the angel Moroni, behind the house of the Lord, plaque or whatever, is the room that I was taken to, and that's the Holy of Holies of the Father. Anyway, so, and like the letter that I have, it's really thick. It's like 20 pages long or something like that. Anyway, but they sent, so I sent that out on a Monday, that letter that I'd written, and I wrote 2 letters, because I didn't want to be like, oh, hey, guess what? God told me I'm the next prophet, or any kind of crazy stuff like that. Like, I never told them that. But God did tell me in my 95 experience that I would be the final prophet before the return of Jesus Christ. And that was like when I was anti-Mormon. So I'm like, anyway, but but I didn't tell him all of that, but I did tell him about hearing the voice of the Father and Jesus taking me through the temple and up into that room. And I drew detailed diagrams and pictures to the best of my ability of that room. So I sent that off on a Monday in 2004. I think it was like April of 2004. And uh, on Thursday, I got a call from my stake president, and I was in a singles ward, and the singles ward was in the stake building at the time. Anyway, but he said somebody wants to meet you, and would you please be to the sacrament meeting an hour to 30 minutes early, or some? I think it was a half an hour early. I can't remember. Anyway, so that Sunday I was there, and L. Tom Perry came, and he wanted to meet me, and he wanted to interview me. And we talked, and it was kind of funny because like we're sitting there talking on the back pew, and people are walking in, and like then people start to notice because like we were the first people there. People start to notice that I was talking to L. Tom Perry, and anyway, so probably got about 102 to 104,000 pounds on right now. Anyway, so like he stayed through the meeting, and he like asked if the people who were speaking would shorten their talk so that he could speak too. And he talked about callings and all of that. But before all of that, when we were talking, he stood up and he slapped me on the back with this grin on his face, and he said, "Well, God's the one that chooses our prophets, because we sure don't." And I was like, I don't know what that means, but okay. Anyway, but he knew about that, and I was like, and he was still alive in January of 2013, and that stake president, I said, look, and I showed him. So he told me, L. Tom Perry told me after the meeting, go see the stake president. He has something for you. So I did. I went, and there was a manila envelope with my letter in it, copies of my letter, and they had like the archive numbers. So they put them in the church presidency vault and the church's general archives, I believe. There's two different archive numbers. The stamps, email of the first presidency, all of that fun stuff. Anyway, so I showed him the stake president, like, look, like you can request these to see these, these are copies, but like this is in the church's. And I said, L. Tom Perry will tell you that they've interviewed me about this. Like I really have. Like they didn't have a problem with it, so I don't know why you're having a problem. It didn't matter though, because this guy was hell bent on excommunicating this bold-faced liar, because God can't appear to anybody but the president of the church. Anyway, so I told him, later on when I found out I couldn't get there on time for this sham bullshit trial, and I'm sorry it was bullshit. And the fact that they wouldn't even make it so that I could be there. Anyway, so I was really upset because the church was everything to me. Like, I love church, I love the gospel, I love God, and I'm being excommunicated because I can't have the experiences that I've had my whole life. My whole life, I've had all these experiences. But, the crowning one was where I saw the Father and the Son in the spring of 2003. But I'm not allowed to, And I didn't even tell people. Like, the only reason my mother-in-law knew is because I told my wife. And by the way, when I told my wife, she said that the spirit was so strong that she could hardly breathe because it was like overtaking her, like not in a bad way, but the spirit and love and all of that was just so strong, you know. So like she's talking to her mom about it, and her mom is doesn't want her like her daughter to marry me because I'm just some stranger and they don't even know who I am, and you know, whatever. Even though God told both of us to get married, and on that point, neither one of us wanted to get married. We were happy being single. Um, Maybe she wasn't happy being single, but she was scared to even date. And in fact, her her bishop actually told her that, you know, you need to be nice to the guys because she was actually kind of mean to them, kind of a defense mechanism, and she'd went through some really bad things that I won't get into on this video. But we weren't looking for each other, and it wasn't until that day when God told me to call her and just tell her certain things, and I answered the prayer that she had asked God 2 hours earlier. I answered all of her questions without her saying a word. I just told her, hey, this is Mark. I know you've never talked to me before or anything. You've never heard my voice, but Heavenly Father asked me to tell you some things. And then she was silent the whole time. And I told her everything as God was giving it to me. It was like He was using my mouth to speak to her. Anyway, and then, you know, after we hung up, my phone actually, because I was at this pool party, it got wet and the moisture got into my flip phone, like a Motorola flip phone or whatever. LG, who knows. Anyway, my phone wouldn't work for 3 days, so I couldn't call her back, and she couldn't call me. But after I hung up, God told me, take her as your wife. And I told God, I'm not going to tell her that I'm, like, God told me that you're going to be my wife. Like, that sounds crazy. And people have done that to me before. You're going to be my husband. God told me you're going to, like, multiple times. Like, people feel the Spirit really strong, especially when I was in the LDS church. Like, whenever I'd talk, I would be the gospel doctrine teacher, or when I wasn't the gospel doctrine teacher that weekend or whatever, I would, you know, I'd sit on the side and I'd assist. And, like, people would feel the Spirit and around me, like, really strong. And I've been, as a truck driver, all over North America, and, like, people would feel the Spirit really strong around me, like, all of the time. And they would fall in love with that feeling that they felt around me, but it wasn't me they were feeling. It was the Spirit that was testifying truth to them that they would feel. And I knew that. Because why in the world would you ever want to be with a truck driver who's had this ridiculous history and was a drug addict and has been homeless multiple times in his life and like screwed up in the head because of all the trauma and the abuse that I suffered as a kid. You know, that's my thinking. Why in the world would anybody ever want to be with me? But they would feel that Spirit. But anyway, so I told or well, I told God, you know, I'm not gonna tell her, like, if she's supposed to be my wife, you need to send her to me because I'm not going to do that. And 3 days later, she calls me up and she says, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I have to tell you, and I don't want to, but God told me to ease your burden and bear you children. And I said, yeah, God told me to take you as my wife. And then we were like, well, I guess we should get to know each other then, because we didn't really know each other. Like, we would talk about things a little bit here and there, like in that chat group that we were in, but we didn't really know each other. Anyway, so that was May 28th when I called her the first time, and we got to know each other over Skype and just talking on the phone as I worked, driving truck, whatever. And at that time, I was a local driver. I did directional drilling, hauling directional drilling for a fiber optic company around the Tampa Bay area, Clearwater, all that. Anyway, so we just tried to get to know each other the best we could, and because we both trusted God, it was more about trusting Him than putting our trust in anyone else, because both of us have had not great experiences. So, so I flew up and I met her on June 30th, one day after my birthday, 2012. And I met her family, and I met her family in New Hampshire and in New York. We drove down to North Carolina, Wilmington area, and I met most of the rest of her family. And then we drove down to Florida, and we were married in Pinellas County in St. Petersburg, Florida, where I lived, on July 20th, 2012. 20 days after we met in person. So anyway, yeah, this video is long enough, and I know some people can't stand listening to long videos, but I'm a long format kind of guy. So anyway, I'm here in Duchesne, Utah. I got to go over this lovely mountain that I'm just getting on the road to go up. We are at 5,528 feet, and I'm going up to 9,114 feet, and then back down. So anyway, I hope that this helps. One thing, I was going to the LDS church still for a long time. And when we moved from New Hampshire to Spanish Fork, Utah, the stake president asked Thomas Monson what they should do about me. And Thomas Monson told them just to leave me alone and to allow me to speak in church, and just to leave me alone, basically. He did tell them, he shouldn't take the sacrament or whatever, and he knew me, he knows me, he knew me when he was alive, but anyway, it wasn't until we moved to Orangeville in Emery County, Utah, that that stake president, he told me that if I spoke to people at church, that he would have me trespassed against the church, which meant that I would not be able to go on any church-owned properties or to any church-owned properties, any of them. Anyway, I just after that I was like, you know what, I'm not going to deal with these people in my life. And that was the last day I went to church, and that was 2015, or no, 2016. So anyway, so no, I'm not a card-carrying Mormon. Doesn't matter though, because they don't have any authority, and it's like, oh no, am I not a Baptist anymore? Who cares? They have no authority. It's the same with the LDS Church. Like, the narrative is that they're the one and only true church, the kingdom of God on the earth, even though I can show how the early leaders of the church contradict that. You know, they say no, you're wrong about that. But it doesn't matter, because the correlation committee has got everybody wrapped up in their milk toast lies, their ABC 1, 2, 3 version of the gospel, and they badmouth anything that doesn't go along with that, like the Adam God doctrine, for instance. And the fact that Jesus Christ told them, section 124, revelation given to from Jesus Christ to Joseph Smith, January 18th, 1841. Jesus Christ says, build a temple whereby the Most High can come dwell therein, that he might restore that which he hath taken away, even the fullness of the gospel, or the fullness of the priesthood. Now, Jesus Christ is telling Joseph Smith about the third person who he calls the Most High. That's the Father. That he has to restore, personally restore this authority in a temple. Jesus tells him all the things that were going to happen if they were obedient. This will be the beginning of Revelations. I will restore the times and seasons, which are the holy days of Jehovah. There was like sacrificial stuff that was going to start again with the sons of Levi. Just a bunch of stuff. But Jesus also tells them, and if you don't do what I tell you to do, building the temple, you shall be cursed and rejected. The church will be rejected with their dead. It's in plain English. If you can't see it in plain English, it's because you are blinded by the correlation committee of the church. Like, they've got everybody saying, I know the church is true. You should know that the gospel is true. You should be singing praises to Jesus Christ, not your president, who you call a prophet, seer, and revelator, who has absolutely no fruit of being a prophet, seer, and revelator. Just like Thomas Monson. I asked God one time as I was standing next to Thomas Monson, is he really, truly a prophet of God? And God said no, he is a steward whose right it is to rule until he whose right, no, how do you put it? He is a steward over the church until he whose right it is to rule and reign comes. Little did I know that I was the one whose right it is to rule and reign came. They still had priesthood, but the church had been rejected in Nauvoo. So it was a fallen and rejected church, which goes along with the Kirtland curse, where they were under condemnation. So it was first under condemnation, and then accursed, and then rejected. That's how it goes. Condemnation, curse, rejected. All they who hinder this work will be cursed unto the third and fourth generation, which just so happens to be 160 years. So, In July of 2013, God told me to raise my arms to the square after the Melchizedek priesthood and to use the authority I was given to sever the ordinances and the priesthood of all the holy people. This is baptisms, this is sealings and marriages, this is blessings, all of it cut off. Priesthood, everything. I said, why do you want me to do this? He said, because if they will not accept you as my witness, I will not accept them. So that's the boat that you're in. And it's a game of Russian roulette, basically. Maybe that bullet of truth isn't really, going to hurt you, but maybe it is, because maybe it's true, and rejecting me, no matter what you think of me personally, rejecting me means that you're rejecting God, because I have been sent by the Father and the Son. I am the second witness of the Father, Jesus Christ being the first. The only ones who are higher than above me in authority is Jesus Christ and the Father, because I am the witness of the Father and the Son. The Holy Ghost incarnate, come in the flesh. And that is a great big old title that I'm grateful for the experiences that I've had, but God actually, when I was being excommunicated, I was like, God, why in the world has this happened to me? He said, kneel down before me and ask me who you are. And I did, and he showed me. And, okay, so I know who I am now. In fact, when I saw myself in the pre-existence among they who are mighty and strong, and that there's 12 of us that stand in front of the throne of God. Also, the Father, the Son, and the witness are also mighty and strong. But when I saw that I was among they who were mighty and strong, and that after the war in heaven I was chosen to take the office of God the witness, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was looking at this thing, this vision, like we're taken into space. Like it was an out-of-body experience in this vision, where the Father's standing next to me and showing me these things. And I looked at the Father and I said, am I the witness? Because I thought it was Joseph Smith. And he looked at me with this smile on his face and he said, well, it has to be somebody. And I'll never forget that. And I don't think I felt like I was ready to be the witness, but I was chosen. And I have no idea why God chose me to be the witness for this earth. But I was chosen. And I was like, how can this be? How can I have had my calling and election made sure? How can I have seen you face to face and had you put your hands upon my head and give me the fullness of the priesthood and give me all of these keys and all of this authority that you've given me? He said, it's not because of who you are in this life. It's because of who you were before you came here. And that was like long before he showed me who I actually am. Like it was at that point where I was being excommunicated. And like, why is this happening to me? Like I love the church. I love being among people who want to talk about the gospel, and I love feeling the Holy Spirit testify of truth, and I feel that when I'm with like-minded people, when we talk about gospel topics, I feel the Spirit, especially when I'm teaching. If I'm teaching, I feel it really strong. And I was being cut off, even though I was being completely obedient and completely truthful. I was being cut off. by an angry, red-faced piece, a son of Satan, as far as I'm concerned. The corporate shill, one of the high priests of apostate Mormonism, the Sadducees of apostate Mormonism. I don't know. I don't even know what to say. Like, it still angers me. But when God took me out of that church, He started showing me things. And there was a lot of stuff that I knew because I studied so much. But I always made excuses. Oh, the people aren't perfect, but the church is. Oh, the prophets, they can't tell us the deeper things because we're not ready. You know, all of the excuses. God revealed to me the truth. That the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, though it contains some of the gospel and the restoration, though Joseph Smith is a true prophet, though the Book of Mormon is true, the church itself has apostatized. It has changed many of the ordinances and the endowments and all these things. In fact, the original endowment in the Nauvoo Temple was an endowment of power that comes along with receiving the fullness of the priesthood. Brigham Young changed things. Brigham Young was not at all the Lord's anointed. He was not a prophet of God. He was inspired from time to time, but he was not a prophet of God. He led a fallen and rejected church that was under condemnation and a curse. And Jesus said, if you do what I say, I will fight your battles for you, and you shall not be removed from your place. But they were removed from their place. They lost everything. Thousands of people died walking across Iowa and across Nebraska and Wyoming into Utah on the Pioneer Trail. That happened. It wasn't because of the persecution that they were receiving. That was part of it. But if they had been obedient, Jesus said, I will fight your battles and you shall not be removed from your place. It's all in Doctrine and Covenants, section 124. The temple was never finished. The Father, who the temple was meant to be built for, never came. The Shekinah glory of God that fell upon Solomon's temple and upon the tabernacle in the wilderness with Moses and upon the Kirtland temple never shone upon the Nauvoo temple because it was never finished. They dragged their feet. They were taking the wood that they had sent missionaries up into Wisconsin to chop wood and send it down the Mississippi so that they could build that temple. And they were building the Masonic temple. Brigham Young was building the second story of his mansion. I guess he forgot the whole be equal in all things. If you are not equal, you are not mine. You know. There's a couple scriptures talk about that. You know, it is not given for one man to own that which is above another, wherefore the whole world lieth in sin. They were building all these other things with consecrated wood that was meant for building the temple. That's why it was never finished. When Joseph Smith was murdered, they had just started working on the second story of that temple. There was a lot more stuff going on behind the scenes as well that the leaders um, that Joseph Smith had to fight with them all the time because they were trying to take control of the church in ways that they had no authority to do. And after Joseph Smith was murdered, it took 3 years for Brigham Young to declare himself the president of the church. And it took even longer for him to say that he was a prophet. In fact, he said that he wasn't a prophet. But that history gets scrubbed because, the line of succession from Brigham Young until today is pure and valid. No, it is not. Lyman White in his journal wrote that Joseph Smith today announced that they were at a poor, fallen state, that the church had been rejected with their dead because of their slothfulness and their wickedness. Lyman White. And that was in 1843. And guess what happened? Church is rejected in 1843. Joseph Smith wraps some stuff up. He gets murdered after the church is rejected. The name had been removed from the church. Jesus Christ had taken his name out of the church. But for some reason, the members of the LDS church will say, well, you're an apostate, you're a heretic, because you're telling us things that are in our scriptures that we don't believe. Whatever. Whatever. When Jesus Christ said, all they who hinder this work, which they did, Brigham Young among others, hinder this work, they will be cursed to the third and fourth generation. One generation of the Israelites following Moses in the wilderness, they did that for one generation. How many years was that? That was 40 years. How many generations is 4 generations according to God? 160 years. Church was rejected for 160 years. And in Doctrine and Covenants, section 85, verse 6 and 7, Jesus Christ tells Joseph Smith, I will send one mighty and strong to set the house of God in order, implying that it would get out of order. Well, that man who was called and accepted, I think, stretches forth his hand to steady the ark and is destroyed by the vivid shaft of lightning. That hasn't happened yet. But that man who was called and appointed, it's called and appointed, that's the president of your church. He was called and appointed to be the president of your church. He is not a prophecyr or a revelator. There's inspiration going on, but there's also, you get what you deserve. And as a church who is cursed and rejected, you have a demon leading you, and you don't even know it. Like, you love him so much. He is a wicked and vile and disgusting man and a murderer. And you all love him, but you have no idea. It's like the Germans loved Hitler. Oh, the great Führer! Oh, hell Hitler! And all that fun stuff. They loved him. And he was a monster, and so is the president of your church, and you deserve it. Because you, as a church, you have rejected the meatier portions of the gospel, and it's gotten so bad that you choke on the milk. You choke on the skim milk. You've rejected the ordinances, the endowments, the washings and the anointings. You've rejected the fact that Jesus Christ is not Jehovah. You think he is Jehovah because of your apostate mind. And when Jesus Christ said, I will send one mighty and strong to set the house of God in order, He never said the church. He said the house. In the days of Noah, there were 8 people which constituted the house of God, and that's it. The church drowned. A lot of people think that the church will be set back in order. It will not. They've been rejected. God does not put new wine into old bottles, because if He did, they would burst. And they've gone so far off the path of iniquity, where they should have stayed with the restoration. They're not ever going to ever be recovered. Their buildings might stand, but they will not be there. The priesthood was never taken off the earth, but when I severed it, I was the only one on the earth who had it. And that was a revelation, Daniel chapter 12. In the last days, Michael stands up, and it's like talking about the last days, and it talks about the man clothed in linen who raises his hands to heaven, and he scatters the power. And this is the King James English, not the Aramaic or the Hebrew or any other. This is our version of it. He scattered both his hands in the air, scatters the power of all the holy people in the last days. Who are the holy people in the last days? The set apart people, to the Kodesh people. Kodesh, holy, it means to be set apart for God. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, all of the Restoration movement, they're supposed to be set apart for God, holy unto God. The man clothed in linen scatters the power, the priesthood of all the holy people. You're part of those people. Even those apostate Mormons, the ones who think that Joseph Smith was a fraud, they're part of that people. The power is the priesthood. It has been severed. Prophecy has been fulfilled. Plagues have been unleashed upon the earth. They are starting off with a great deal of mental plagues. Mental and physical. But more mental at first. They're spiritual plagues. And you don't get to control the truth of the program. And I would rather not tell you these things, because I don't want to be the messenger, but guess what? I am the messenger, and this is why I get the death threats. So, I guess you'll just have to deal with it. Anyway, like I said, this is a long video. I need to end it, and even though the person who I made this for claims to have ADD, I don't think he's going to watch it all, but I know that other people will. So one of the things, by the way, we're at 7,648 feet. I wonder if I could change. Wish I could show you how pretty it is up here. Maybe I can. Oh, okay, come on. Okay. Cows. Yeah. Anyway, a lot of times people will ask me questions, and I'll answer it, and they won't listen. And I have friends who who get discouraged because of the same type of thing, I always tell them, look, they might not accept what you're saying. They might reject everything you're saying and call you a heretic and a lunatic and all the nice names that they like to, judge you by. But there's other people who do not say anything, and they're listening and they're reading and they're watching. So anyway, by the way, I record. I like recording it in case something fun happens. 7,800 feet. We still got 300 feet to go until the top. In elevation, so 9,100. Oh wait, 9,100. That's not. That's not. That's like 1,000. 1,100 feet. 1,300 feet. Yeah, got 1,300 feet to go. All right. Oh, I hate it when people do that. When they flip their video around. But sorry. Anyway, I'm gonna end this video. I probably said more than I should, but maybe it's for a reason. Take care, everyone. Oh, God will bless you as you're obedient.